Hey, what's up guys? Yes, so today I'm super excited about today's video. It's something you guys find very interesting, it's something I find very interesting. Before we get started, please hit the like, the subscribe, and the notification bell because I post every Mondays and Thursdays. Also, on Thursdays, I think I'm going to start making like creepy videos like this because I think they're fun. I think they bring a lot of attention. If you think that's something you would enjoy, please leave your comments down below and let's get started. The first event that we're talking about is the incident at De La Veille. This happened February 1st of 1959. 9 ski hikers went mysteriously missing in this mountain range in Russia. The group had set up camp, they had had dinner, they had gotten ready for bed, and then something had to have gone horribly wrong, because upon finding their campsite 26 days later, they had found that they had left their campsite without clothes, without shoes. Their tents had been ripped from the inside out. It had looked disastrous. Their clothes had been scattered everywhere. And it was evident by the fact that they had set up their camp. They had had dinner and stuff, that they weren't planning on leaving. So something had to have gone wrong. And this raised eyebrows when they didn't come back when they were supposed to. Upon first investigating, they thought, oh, they had died of hypothermia, which would have made sense because it's the middle of winter in Russia and they're hiking in the middle of the woods. But when medical examiners had taken further investigation, they had found that this wasn't the case, seeing as most of them had blunt force trauma that was consistent to brutal assault. Some of them had been vomiting up blood. One of them had their tongues cut out. Another one had third-degree burns. So there was just a lot of evidence that it wasn't just hypothermia. It wasn't just one thing. When investigating further, they had found their clothes, and that had radioactive material. This had brought a lot of curiosity to this case, because at the time radioactive material wasn't really present. It wasn't something that was very common, so a lot of people thought, oh, that this was either the government or aliens or something, because radioactive material was new and nobody really knew much about it or where it came from. The second story that we're going to talk about happened in West Virginia in 1945. The Sauter family's house burned down the night before Christmas. And when the smoke had cleared and everything had settled, only 5 of their 10 children were still there. And this takes a turn, because when they had investigated the fire, there was literally no physical evidence of the missing 5 children. And usually when something burns up in a fire, whether it be paper or something, you can tell what it was. And there was no evidence that there was any children or anything anywhere near this at the time. Now, it started raising questions that this wasn't just a normal fire and that something had seriously gone wrong when they noticed that the phone lines in their house had been cut, not burned in the fire, but had been cut before. And the coal truck that their family used had been previously working that day, and when he went to turn it on to save the 5 children he thought were still in the fire, it wouldn't work. And that just wasn't something that happened usually, because it had been working earlier in the day. Now, this takes kind of a sick twist when a woman claimed to have seen the 5 missing children peering from a passing car as the fire was happening. And at this time in West Virginia, they had an Italian mafia going on, and this family was also Italian. So days later, a week later, a woman who had recognized the children from a newspaper article said that she had seen the children at a hotel, and they were with 2 men and 2 women of Italian descent. And when she tried to speak to the children, the men got hostile and wouldn't allow them to speak to them. This was strange, and she had brought this to their attention, seeing as she had noticed them from billboards that the family had posted. And this gets really even more twisted, because the last known Sauter child, her name is Sylvia, she's 69, still believes that her siblings didn't perish in that fire and that something seriously wrong had happened. But to this day, they still don't know what happened to those 5 missing children. So this next story that we're going to talk about is literally terrifying, because it involves the police too. So a lot of people think that this was a big cover-up for something, but they don't know. But in March of 1929, a single mother named Christine Collins had reported her 9-year-old son missing from their LA home. 5 months later, into this investigation, the police brought back who they say was Walter, and the mother knew it wasn't him. And when she would raise concern and she would tell the police, they kept trying to convince her, oh no, this is your son, this is your son. But she knew that it wasn't. And it got to the point where they had charged her with bad parenting and put her into a mental institute to cover this up. Years later, the investigation is still going on, and the real Walter Collins has never been found. But over time, the authorities came to believe that he was a victim of a convicted child murderer named Gordon Stewart Northcott. The mother, Northcott, offered a confession, but the police didn't take it for killing Walter. But whatever happened to Walter Collins, his body was never found, and no one ever really learned what happened to him. It was never really established with certainty why the police tried to cover this up and tried to cover up his disappearance and everything, that they went as far as to bring a different child to his mother, which is so twisted. I can't even think about that. It's terrifying that they would try to bring another child to his mother and not only try to convince her, but try to convince the rest of the world that was looking into this case that this was Walter, even though it was evident that it really wasn't him. But they went on to establish that he had just been killed along with multiple other children in the Gordon Stewart case. This next story it's a little creepy. It takes place in the 1900s in the coast on the coast of Scotland. 3 lighthouse keepers went missing in a strange instant. There was no evidence that anything had gone wrong. But when this lighthouse was managed by 3 people at all times. But when one of the relief keepers came on December 26th, the lighthouse was empty. There was nobody there. And to this day, no one really knows what happened. Only that things, there was nothing out of place except for one overturned kitchen chair. There was no bodies ever found, no evidence that they had even ever been in the lighthouse in the first place, which is strange because they had worked there every day. They had, to the point where they had lived in this lighthouse. But there was no evidence. All their clothes had been left fine. They just disappeared, and to this day, nobody knows whatever happened to them. And the last story that we're talking about is the missing flight of 370. This took place actually a lot more recently than the others had. This took place in March of 2014 when a Malaysia flight was going from Malaysia to China and was carrying 239 passengers. And it kind of gets twisted because mid-flight they had lost all connection. Nobody had talked to the flight or the captains or anything. And it seemed to have just disappeared into midair, which is really creepy. But over this wide search, since the day that this plane had gone missing, only 20 pieces of debris has been found from this plane. And to this day, nobody knows exactly what happened or where the big part of this plane or any of the passengers have gone. Only that there's no evidence of this flight ever existing, and that's just kind of what makes this even creepier. Well, that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you really enjoyed this video. Also, shout out of the week goes to my friend Tyrus for being the first one to follow my Instagram and like every picture I post. So you can find him right here. Go follow him and have a good week. Bye!